Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to show you another variety of Cymbidium ensifolium that I have. But before I get started, if you're not familiar with Cymbidium ensifolium, it's one species within this group of East Asian Cymbidiums that are mostly native to East Asia. And ensifolium together with a couple of other species are probably the most widely cultivated. And within all that, in my experience, Cymbidium ensifolium is also the most widely cultivated available species out there. I think there are a couple of factors contributing to it. First one is that it's pretty robust. There are a lot of robust cultivars that are fast growing and readily available and easy to cultivate. And the second one is because of that, the price isn't as high as some of the other cultivars and species. And third of all is that it doesn't really need vernalization to flower. Vernalization just means exposure to prolonged period of cold temperature so that the flower will either form or bolt. In this case, a lot of them will need the cold stimulation to successfully flower, or the flower spike will get tall enough in the upcoming spring. But ensifolium does not need that. It actually can flower multiple times a year. Sometimes people also call it four-season orchid because theoretically, if the temperature is appropriate, it can flower all the time and it can grow all the time. I haven't had mine for more than a year, so I can't testify for their growth in the winter. But in my experience, they usually start flowering depending on the variety. Sometimes summer, early summer, midsummer. Right now is late summer. Throughout the year until maybe about Halloween or Thanksgiving-ish. Just a wide range, so like late summer, fall-ish. But usually, that's a pretty wide range and they can flower multiple times a year. That's always a plus. Unlike some of my callias, they're just like, well, you have put in all the hard work this whole year. I'm gonna reward you with 3 flowers of amazing flowers and that's it. You have to wait until next year. Not the case with ensifolium, so I love those. And East Asian Cymbidiums as a group don't usually have the most extravagantly flowered or colored flowers like, callias. So during cultivation, and Cymbidium, they're pretty straightforward. You have a spike coming off of a pseudobulb and just flowers on top of it. So throughout the years, people have thought of other ways to create different variation within the flower. So some of them have, and most of them are, the color is also pretty straightforward, from maybe red or pink to a little bit green, yellowish green to white. But because of that, people have cultivated a lot of forms of their flowers and leaves, etc. Some leaves are more upright. In this case, they're technically, this one, people would say goes up midway and then start to arch. And some have different shapes of flowers, and let me focus on that because that's the characteristic of this cultivar in front of us. So this one is called Fushan's butterfly, and its Chinese name is Fushan奇蝶. It was cultivated in Taiwan sometime back in the 80s and then has been hugely popular ever since. As you see the flower, it's not like a typical orchid flower, and there are a lot of mutations in it. In the typical sense of a Cymbidium, they would have the flower spike and the flower will come off on the branch and then face sideways with 3 sepals, 2 petals, and 1 lip, and of course the column where the male and female parts are. But in this case, it has gone into this feeling that there's layers of flowers within the same flower. So let's just pick one to trace it back. So on this flower spike or this inflorescence, this is the first branch. Usually the first branch will be 1 flower, but in this case, it's just this cluster of stuff. And if you go deeper, you'll see there are a lot of layers that look like sepals, and within that there are some petal-looking things, and there are some multiple lip-looking structures. And a lot of times people say that their mutation specific, this variety's mutation is about making the column and the lip, like the column will become lip and sepals, petals, I think, and then it just keeps going to give you this feeling that there is flower inside the flower inside the flower. So within this group, of course, it's not just this type of mutation. There's other types, but they just look much more layered, and sometimes they just look like a peony, or sometimes look like a butterfly. But I think you really have to use your imagination to make it look like a butterfly. So in those cases, those are peculiar in that way, but because of that, they have a lot of floral structures within the same inflorescence. Also, by the way, the other side of it is, part of it is that the flower kind of faces upward instead of sideways. That's also one thing people talk about. Okay, going back to what I was talking about earlier, because it had a lot of floral parts, theoretically it had a lot of parts that can produce the fragrance. So this one should smell much more fragrant than all the other ones. And as a rule of thumb, those multiple flowered, those odd mutated ones smell stronger than the white or the light colored ones, which smell stronger than the red or darker colored ones. Which also makes sense, in nature you need either color or scent to attract pollinators. But in my experience, oddly, this one does not smell as strong. I have another ensifolium that's actually spiking again that I made a video of earlier. Let me show you the flower spike. It has been growing pretty quickly. I don't know if you can see it here. Like maybe a week ago, it was just a little stuck at the end, at the ground level. So this one is red. It's actually really fragrant, but this one, it's supposed to be one of the most fragrant Cymbidium ensifoliums, but I can't really detect it. It could be that it's too warm right now inside, and a lot of East Asian Cymbidiums, they don't really smell too strongly when it's warm. So that's one probable reason, and of course another reason is that this individual just doesn't smell as much, which I would hate to admit, because in that case it would be hugely disappointing. This plant, it's a cool plant, it's nice and it looks elegant, but I really, really wanted the smell. And I see videos people talking about their plants would bloom on the balcony and their entire yard will smell. So I was really looking forward to that. But in any case, it's still a cool looking flower that's, I guess, peony shaped. And on that topic, because of the lack of color people can breed in this group of Cymbidiums, well, it's not lack of color, just like relative less abundance of color, let's put it that way. But so there are a lot of, people also breed a lot of different shape of flowers. This one, I was talking earlier, is one of the peculiar mutated group, but there are also flowers that look like, some people say look like the lotus flowers, some of them look like the daffodil flowers, and some look like prunus flowers. It just a bunch of criteria people use to judge those flowers. But in any case, that's the flower. It's usually pretty busy, and it branches, and usually the flower are all on top instead of staggered across on the inflorescence. Same story here, and they open upwards, so it give this very busy and very royal, for lack of a better word, looking. And one last thing about the flower is that I've been reading online, some people say that if it's happy, it tends to be more colorful, like, you see those reddish, those red stripes and color, but if it's less happy, it tends to be greener. And also from what I've seen, that this spike opened maybe 5-ish days later than that spike, and this is clearly more green than this one, or less colorful. This is actually a really good example of saying, like, there's a bunch of sepals, and then those are petals, and this is what the lip would look like, and inside the lip there are petals again, and inside of it there is just, I guess, more petals. Anyways, back to the plant itself. Other than the flower, it's really easy to grow. I got mine as a 2 pseudobulb, 3 pseudobulb division back in April, I think. So when I got it, this was one back bulb. This was one of the more mature one, and this one was just for me when I got it. But since then, the old one is flowering, the more mature pseudobulb is flowering, the growing pseudobulb has matured and produced this spike, and on top of that it has put out two new pseudobulbs that are looking pretty healthy. So hopefully those two will flower when the temperature is cooler, and hopefully they will smell a lot more. In terms of its cultivation, similar to other Cymbidium ensifolium, they don't need a lot of sun. I put it in a half shade and half sun kind of dappled shade spots together with my Phalaenopsis violacea and basically Oncidium kind of light. And water, just keep it moist, but don't overdo it, don't overwater, don't underwater it. And they like it warm but not too hot. Well, they grow pretty okay when it's really hot, but it may not flower as well in terms of their fragrance. And last but not least, some people say the medium matters a lot. They certainly do to a degree, but even if those are terrestrial orchids, I still put them in bark. Just because I had some extra laying around and I had some gravel as well, so it's kind of a bark and gravel mixture, and I just put them like in this stacked used rubbing alcohol bottle. I didn't have any of those other pots available back then. Because it's terrestrial, I tried to give it more room for the roots to grow, but later I realized they probably don't need it to be this tall. Maybe like half of it would have been enough. But in any case, the current setting is like this, and it seems to be doing okay. I water it twice a week. Yeah, I don't find them particularly picky about the medium they grow in. If you're feeling fancy, you can get some pumice, but pumice are usually more expensive, so I usually just use perlite to substitute for that. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and one last look at this really elegant orchid that looks like a grass when it's not flowering, but when it is, it's much better than a grass. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.